everyone, my name is John, and I work here in the Education Department at Helen Woodward Animal Center. Now today, I want you to meet my good friend Jose, the ball python. Jose is 3 or 4 years old. Now, like a lot of our animals in this center, we actually got him from an employee. So he's what we call an on-lease animal. And what that means is he actually has an owner who is letting us borrow him so that you guys can meet him. Now, today, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Jose's diet. Now, in the animal kingdom, there are 3 main types of eaters. There's carnivores, herbivores, and omnivores. Now, Jose here is what we call a carnivore. That means he likes to eat almost all animal material, and not really any plants. Now, an herbivore is an animal that really only eats plants and not meat. The third category is an omnivore, and that's like us humans, because we can eat both meat and plants. Now, some humans are vegetarians or don't really eat vegetables at all, but that doesn't mean that they're a carnivore or an herbivore. Because for animals, it's not a choice of what they want to eat, it's actually what their bodies are able to digest. So an animal like Jose here, who's a carnivore, his body actually wouldn't be able to digest plants, and so he could get very sick if he ate any. So that's actually why Jose here is always a carnivore. Now, he likes to eat small mammals, or small lizards. His most popular food in the wild would be little rodents, especially little mice. Now, Jose here is not a very big animal, so he can't eat animals that are too big. So he has to stick to little tiny mammals such as little field mice or little rats. Now, as I mentioned, Jose isn't too big, so he can't eat prey that's too big. Now, the rule of thumb for a snake like Jose is he can only eat something that's about the width of the widest part of his body. So for Jose, that's about this big. Now, this is about the size of a nice little field mouse for Jose. Now, you might be wondering, how does Jose actually get that whole mouse down his little head? Well, he actually has some special tools that help him do that. Now, the way that Jose would eat that mouse is he lies in wait, and when the mouse gets close, he can actually bite it. And once he bites it, he wraps part of his body around the mouse to suffocate it so that it stays in one piece. Now, Jose here actually will eat and swallow his prey whole. That's right, something this big can fit down Jose's little throat. Now, here's how. Jose's jaw is really special. He actually has really stretchy ligaments in his jaw that allow it to open super duper wide. So what he can do is he can actually fit his jaw around that mouse. However, it can still be hard for him to get the thing down his throat because he doesn't have any arms. For you and me, if we want to put a bite of a sandwich into our mouth, we just use our arms and put it down. But for Jose, he has to actually move his jaw around the mouse to keep it going through. So his jaw can actually move and flex in ways that ours can't. So he's actually able to wiggle his mouth around the animal until he has a nice mouse-sized lump in his body. Now, you may still be wondering, once that little mouse is in Jose's neck, how does he move it all the way down his body? Well, it's actually his scales that allow him to do this. Now, Jose's scales are attached to his skin, not to each other. The reason that this is important is because if you were to imagine that you took a sock and you were to put some sequins on it, you can stretch the sock out and unstretch the sock, and the sequins can stretch and go back. If the sequins were attached to each other and not the sock would be stuck and the sequins wouldn't move. So since Jose's scales here are actually attached to his skin and not to each other, he can actually stretch and flex his body to help wiggle that mouse down deeper into his intestines. Now guys, Jose is what we call a sit and wait predator. Now what that means is that instead of running really fast after his prey like a cheetah does until they catch that prey, he actually lies and waits for his prey. So what he does is he'll slither around until he gets a scent. Now the way that he actually gets a scent, guys, is with that tongue. So if you can look closely, you'll be able to see that Jose's tongue actually keeps flicking in and out with that forked tongue, just like this. The reason that it does that is because it actually is the way that he smells. Now, Jose here has something we call a Jacobson's organ on the roof of his mouth. And what he does with that is he actually flicks out his tongue and brings back in the scent, which then touches that Jacobson's organ. So once he does that and he picks up a scent, now he's ready to go and find a good spot to try and hide. But you might be wondering, how would he find such a little prey in such a big place like the wild? Well, he has something else to help him do that, and that's called heat pits. Now, heat pits are something that our pythons here especially have. and those are like thermal vision. Now, if you've ever seen on TV or in a movie a thermal camera, where if you look through it, everything is purple and green except for things that are hot like humans are orange or yellow, well, Jose can actually sense that in the wild. So he can actually see when animals are around him just off of the heat signatures that they leave, because every animal gives off heat that he would want to eat. Now, the reason, guys, that Jose is an ambush or sit-and-wait predator and not a predator like a cheetah who chases after its prey is because although Jose can slither here, he's actually not that fast. Now, let's watch how Jose slithers around. Now let's watch as Jose slithers around here. Now what we can see that he's doing is he's using his body to move. Now the way that snakes do this is actually because they're one big muscle. Now snakes do have bones. They have a long spine in the back and lots of ribs going down. But other than that, they're basically just one long muscle. Now the way that he moves is by contracting and elongating that muscle. So if you look right here, Jose's actually elongating this part of his body while he contracts the other parts, and that allows him to use the friction of the table to move around. Now, as you can see, Jose here slides around this table really easily, and that's because he has these special scales on his stomach that are elongated. Now, elongated means that they're very long, and the reason that that helps Jose is because it allows him to also slide a little bit across the table, but also use them for friction in order to move. So Jose, guys, he needs to be able to grip onto the floor a little bit with those scales in order for him to move, because otherwise he would have a hard time getting around. Now guys, one thing that's unique about reptiles like our ball python Jose is that they shed their entire skin. Now the reason that they do this is because snakes like Jose actually grow throughout their entire lives. Now humans, we stop growing around the age of 18 or 20 or somewhere along those lines, but we still live for a long time after that. Well, for animals like Jose here, he'll actually keep on growing until he's very old. Now, the reason that he needs to shed is because while his body might grow, his scales actually don't grow with him. So he actually needs to shed his scales every once in a while so that he can have a skin that's not too tight. Now, they shed in a really cool way. They use a process called ecdysis. Now, what this means is that Jose, starting at the head, will actually shed his entire skin of scales in one long piece. Now, the best way to think about that is like taking a long sock off of your foot. You don't just rip pieces of the sock off, you slide it off, and there's your foot underneath. Well, that's actually exactly what happens to Jose. Those scales slide off, and his new bigger scales are ready underneath. Now here, we have a real-life shed from one of our other ball pythons here at the center. Now you can notice two really cool things about it. First, you can see how it's all in one piece. So like I said before, when snakes shed, it all comes off in one piece, just like a long sock. The other thing you can notice is if you look closely, you can actually see the individual scales. That's because when that snake sheds, all of those scales have to come off so that the snake cannot have a skin that's too tight for them. Well, everybody, that's all the time we have for today. I'm Mr. John, and this is Jose, and I hope that you guys learned something and had a great time, and we'll see you next episode.